Well, you know what's interesting in all of this, right, is that teachers, and I will say that I've always felt that we put a lot of blame on the teachers that for things that they can't control, right?
Right.
We know how bad the schools are. We know about the underfunding and everything else, but a lot of times, I've seen teachers, very dedicated, hardworking teachers, who are really frustrated because there are certain things that they want to be able to control, but they can't.
Right.
They're hamstrung by the system itself and the certain core, the Common Core, and whatever crap the government tells them to do, and then they're hamstrung by what the parents will and won't do. Like I know, for example, there are communities, and there was a time where if you called the parent, if you said, I'm gonna get your mother on the phone, your mother would set the child straight because it was a
Right.
partnership between the parent and the teacher. And now you have teachers that deal with parents that either aren't there, don't care, or will cuss out the teacher, right? I remember hearing a kid one time, a long time ago, who was like, basically, she was having trouble with school, and the teachers were putting her in detention, and she said, "Well, my teacher's racist." Right. And then I saw her, the mom, and the mom was like, "Yeah, that teacher's racist." And she was saying that in front of the child. So the child was just repeating what they heard the mother say. Right. And I know that definitely in my household, if my mother had an issue with the teacher, I never heard it. I know my mother would fight with the teachers. My father, they would have to go to battle with them, but they would never do that in front of me. And I don't know if that was, and the funny thing is, it's not like, my parents got these, this approach from growing up, in Bel Air or Martha's Vineyard, or that they were wealthy people. Both of my parents grew up, my mother was very poor and my father, was pretty poor. You know what I mean? Like, they were working class anyway, right? So they grew up in the hood or all that stuff, right? So it's not like there is some sort of like definite class distinction here. But there's like a sort of a change in culture, something that's happened in our community. Now, what's interesting to me too is that if you look at a teacher is like a doctor, right? A doctor has certain responsibilities. They play a big role in whether the patient gets healthy or not, etc. But the doctor can't make the patient healthy if the patient is not getting what they need at home. If the
Right.
patient's not doing what they're supposed to do, if they're not taking their medication, if they insist on eating bad food, if they're doing stuff at home that's completely contradictory to what the doctor's trying to do, then the patient's going to die. And you can't say it's all the doctor's fault. Sometimes the doctor's like, I tried, I warned him, I didn't, so we know that the ability of the teacher to do their job is affected by the parent, but also the parent's ability to do their job is affected by our society. A lot of the reason that, like, you look at Chicago schools, for example, where I live, a lot of the reason that you have, so many single parent homes and so many parents that are ill prepared is because, number one, the Chicago public school system isn't very good. So a lot of the parents came out of a bad school system. So the parents graduate from high school, can't even read. So they're not necessarily aware of what they need to do to help their kids. But then also mass incarceration. A lot of the fathers are gone, right? So you don't have complete households anymore. You have people just doing the best they can with what they've got, right? So it's interesting, right? What happens at school is affected by what happens at home, and what happens at home is affected by what happens in society. But then what's so crazy is that what happens in society is also affected by what happens at school and what happens in the home. So it's all connected to each other, right? Like whatever we're teaching our kids in this generation affects society in the next generation. Right? Politics, like our politics is completely ignorant because we don't educate our people on how the political system is supposed to work. Right? So basically, it's this really impossible issue. And it almost seems that as Black people, we've got to sort of pull away from some of that and really have the hard conversations and maybe hurt some feelings and say, look, this is what it is, right? If your child is imitating you dressing any old kind of way, going into a professional setting, they're going to do the same thing, which is going to make it really difficult for them to get what they want out of life, to get jobs, things like that. If you're going to do that, if you think that it's okay to dress that way or do whatever, then okay, well, you better know how to start your own business, and it better be a business where you can work from home and you can stay in your pajamas. Like I kid you not, there are a lot of days where I break all the dress codes. I wear pajamas all day long, right? All day long,
Yeah.
right? Well, you know why I can do that? You know why I can do that, Noma? I can do that because I work from home, right? And I started my own business. But do you think for a second that if I was in the white man's business that I would come to work dressed the same way I dress when I'm running my own business? Hell no, I can't. I would get fired, right? Is that fair? Maybe not, but it don't matter what I think is fair. What matters is what it takes for me to survive. Noma, what say you to all of that? I'm going to stop talking.
There's another part to that. Yeah, you can wear pajamas at home all day, but I'm willing to bet if, let's say CNN called you and said, hey, we need your expertise, or whatever, called you and said, we need your expertise. You're not going in those pajamas, or if you are, it's on the bottom part that they can't see, right? And at the top, you're going to give the appearance of a suit or whatever. You're not going to come in your pajamas and say, well, I'm self-employed and my opinion is so important that I can give it in these pajamas. Because you understand that your credibility is going to be affected by the way that you look. So you take the time to make yourself presentable. So even there's a limit to that freedom that you're talking about.